What happens when people grow tired of waiting for God? Not when God is silent forever, but when He is silent for just a moment. At the foot of Mount Sinai, with fire still burning on the mountain, with miracles still fresh in memory, Israel made a choice that would change their history forever. They traded the invisible God who saved them for a God they could touch. This is the story of the golden calf. Mount Sinai shook with thunder. Lightning tore through the sky. Smoke covered the mountain like a furnace. Moses climbed into the very presence of God. For 40 days and 40 nights, he stayed there receiving the law, the covenant, the commands that would shape an entire nation. Below the mountain, the people waited. At first, they trusted. Then they wondered. Then they doubted. And doubt, left unchecked, always turns into fear. Moses was gone. No voice, no sign, no update. The people gathered around Aaron, Moses' brother. "Where is this Moses?" they asked. "The man who brought us out of Egypt. We don't know what happened to him." Did you notice the shift? The God who split the Red Sea, barely mentioned. Fear makes people forget quickly. They didn't ask Aaron to pray for Moses' return. They didn't ask him to lead them in waiting on God. They demanded action. "Make us gods who will go before us." They wanted a God they could see, a God on their own terms. Aaron should have stopped them. He was the high priest. He should have reminded them of God's power and faithfulness. He didn't. Instead, he made a fatal compromise. He said, "Take off your gold earrings." This was gold taken from Egypt, wealth once given by God as a sign of their deliverance. They handed it over eagerly. Aaron melted it down. He shaped it, formed it. Out of blessing, he crafted betrayal. A golden calf stood before them, and the people shouted a devastating lie. "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you out of Egypt." A lie spoken loudly enough to feel true. To make matters worse, Aaron built an altar. He even used God's name to legitimize the rebellion. "Tomorrow will be a festival to the Lord," he declared. But this wasn't worship. This was replacement. The next day, they offered sacrifices to the idol. They ate, they drank. Then Scripture says something chilling. They rose up to play. This wasn't innocent fun. It was a descent into chaos. Reverence turned into excess and debauchery. When God is reduced to an object we can control, morality collapses right along with it. On the mountain, God spoke, his voice cut through the stillness. "Go down," he said to Moses. "Your people, whom you brought out of Egypt, have corrupted themselves." God saw everything. The impatience, the idol, the betrayal. "They have turned aside quickly from the way I commanded them," God said. His anger was righteous and justified. God declared judgment. "Now leave me alone so that my anger may burn against them and that I may destroy them. Then I will make you into a great nation." This was not an overreaction. This was pure justice for a broken covenant. But Moses pleaded. He stood in the gap. He didn't defend the people's actions. They were indefensible. Instead, he appealed to God's own character and his reputation. "Lord," he argued, "why should your anger burn against your people? What will the Egyptians say? They'll claim you brought them out just to kill them in the mountains." He reminded God of his unbreakable promises to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Moses stood between God's perfect wrath and a deserving people, and Scripture says God relented. Judgment was delayed, but it was not erased. Moses came down the mountain, carrying the 2 stone tablets inscribed by the finger of God. He saw the camp, he saw the calf, he saw the dancing, and in a moment of righteous fury, he threw the tablets to the ground, shattering them at the foot of the mountain. This wasn't an accident, it was a symbol. The covenant had already been shattered by the people. He then grabbed the calf they had made, burned it in the fire, and ground it into a fine powder. He scattered it on the water and then made the Israelites drink it. The God they trusted was reduced to bitter dust in their own mouths. Moses confronted Aaron. "What did these people do to you that you led them into such great sin?" Aaron's response was weak. He blamed the people, saying, "You know how prone these people are to evil." He minimized his own role, claiming he just threw the gold into the fire and out came this calf. Weak leadership always deflects and makes excuses, but accountability was coming. Judgment followed swiftly. The Levites, the tribe of priests, stood with Moses against the idolaters. 3,000 people fell that day. Sin always costs more than we expect. Even forgiven sin leaves deep and painful scars. The story of the golden calf wasn't really about gold. It was about control. The people wanted a God they could manage, a God who wouldn't ask them to wait, a God who wouldn't disappear into silence and demand faith. This story isn't just ancient history, it's a mirror. Every time our impatience replaces our trust in God's timing, every time we choose comfort over obedience, every time we try to reshape God to fit our own desires and expectations, the calf returns. The question this story leaves us with is simple, and it's for all of us. Will you wait for the true and living God? Will you create something easier to worship? Thanks for watching. If this story spoke to you, consider subscribing for more content that goes deep into the scriptures.